And welcome to Studio 5. We have lots to get to this week. We're answering the question, where are they now, when it comes to the amazing singer Stacy Lattisaw? And what's ABC's Paula Faris doing now that she's no longer hosting The View or anchoring Good Morning America weekend editions? And you'll meet the up-and-coming rapper who walked away from the business just as things were about to take off. So let's get to the countdown of this week's uplifting entertainment headlines.
At number 5. That's the sound of Hillsong United's latest single, Another in the Fire. It's part of the worship team's new album titled People. Recorded live at the Hillsong Worship and Creative Conference in Sydney, Australia. People is available for pre-order today ahead of its April release. At number 4.
What happens when someone sees or feels the presence of God?
Morgan Freeman is back for the 3rd season of his National Geographic series, The Story of God. This season premieres with the actor touring the Holy Land and can be seen Tuesday evenings at 9.
How has it changed you?
The thing that really sticks with me is that unconditional love.
Two hearts together, we're a harmony so right. Two sparks united, we're a fire burning bright.
That angelic sound is a Studio 5 flashback to Stacy Lattisaw in 1984. An amazing voice then and now, and these days you can find her in ministry. We sat down with Stacy back in 2010 for a look back at her life and her career.
Smooth R&B from yesterday and today. Bob Baritone Thomas here.
Bob Thomas's radio show is a nightly musical flashback.
Going back in time just a wee taste. Up to the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. to check out this young lady. The one and only Stacy Lattisaw, and let me be your angel.
That 80s love song was the first top 10 record for a child whose voice was often called
Angelic, I guess would probably be the best word, and powerful. I mean, just she projects.
It has its ups and downs, you know, being a recording artist.
Singing runs in the Lattisaw family. Stacy's mother, Sandra, sang with the late Marvin Gaye and helped her daughter to break into the music industry.
But at 12 years old, I was just a baby. I didn't know what it was like. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, at that young age, I was just a child.
A child who, in her prime, recorded an album a year for about 10 years.
This is Stacy Lattisaw's version of Love on a Two-Way Street.
I found love on a two-way street.
At 15, that hit led to a 36-week tour with Michael Jackson.
That was the highlight of my career, meeting Michael Jackson. Now that was a tremendous opportunity for me to even be considered to be the opening act, because they personally called my parents to ask them if I could be on the tour. And of course, my first answer was no, I didn't want to do it. So they talked me into it, and I didn't.
Stacy Lattisaw's singing career took her to Europe, Japan, and spots around the globe. But no matter where she performed, she often longed for family and the comforts of home, right here in Southeast D.C.
I was working, you know, at 12 and 13 years old. That was a job for me.
A job she didn't always enjoy. In between performances and posing for pictures with music icons, Stacy suffered panic attacks and years of depression.
My mom would take me to the doctor, and the doctor would say that she's just under a lot of stress, you know, and it just took its toll on me.
Still, Stacy kept singing. In 1989, she landed a top spot on the Billboard charts with Where Do We Go From Here? It was her last recording.
It reached #1 on the charts, and she disappeared. How apropos. Where do we go from here? I'm out.
Fame and fortune left her unfulfilled, but Stacy remembered lessons she learned in church as a child.
And I went to the Lord and I dropped to the floor. I said, God, I need to know who you are. I've heard about you, but I need to know that you are real. And a presence just took over me. Glory to God. And I never been the same.
Walking away from a lucrative career seemed like a big step, especially for Stacy's new husband.
While you're married to Stacy Lattisaw now, there's a possibility that you may have to be the single breadwinner for the time, and it was definitely a lot of weight, and I just trusted God.
In the process of that, I had no more income coming in. I had no more, I didn't know how my bills were going to get paid, but the Lord supernaturally almost tripled Kevin's salary, where he was able to take care of me, just like God. He takes care of his own.
In addition to finances and no more life on the road, there was another silver lining.
I've been a stay-at-home mom for 16 years, which has been a blessing for me.
Her son is a self-taught pianist.
Yeah, some of them call me Little Lattisaw, some of the teachers and stuff.
Her 12-year-old daughter has a familiar singing voice.
She wants to sing, and I'm like, Lord, keep her heart tender toward you, because she loves to worship God.
And after more than 20 years away from the recording industry, Stacy Lattisaw is in the studio she and her husband own, working on a different kind of love song.
Our gifts are for the kingdom of God. But when I was a little girl, I didn't know anything about Christ. I didn't understand what it was to walk in the things of God and to live a holy life. I didn't know any of that.
Stacy Lattisaw now ministers in word and song. She and her husband own and operate 2 businesses, and she has a youth empowerment program to encourage the next generation.
Still ahead on Studio 5.
We went to college together. I was in the broadcasting program.
Paula Faris takes a new seat since leaving The View. We'll show you where and listen in.
Welcome back to Studio 5. The countdown of the best uplifting entertainment headlines continues now.
At number 3.
Found warmth in a black queen for when I get cold like Nat King.
Chance the Rapper is counting 2 new blessings. As Studio 5 reported, the Grammy winner married his childhood sweetheart in a California ceremony with about 150 family members and friends watching, including Kanye West, Dave Chappelle, and Kirk Franklin.
Are you ready for your miracle?
Counting blessing number 2 on Instagram, Chance shares, "We're pregnant again. It's a girl. Thank you, Jesus." At number 2.
You know, there's one place that all the people with the greatest potential are gathered. One place, and that's the graveyard.
Hollywood heavyweight Viola Davis and NBA star Steph Curry are teaming up to bring a documentary to the big screen. Emanuel is a stirring documentary about the 2015 Charleston church shooting. Steph Curry says the film highlights how a horrible tragedy can bring a community together and spreads an important message about the power of forgiveness.
When I actually gave my life to Christ in middle school in Charlotte, I was a Church of God.
He's been hosting private screenings ahead of the film's June 17th and 19th release.
People ask me all the time, what kind of stories do you want to tell, Viola? And I say, exhume those bodies. Exhume those stories.
And that leaves us with only one more story in this week's countdown. We'll get to that in just a little bit. ABC News' Paula Faris has shared her faith with viewers for many years. And since stepping away from The View and Good Morning America, she's sharing even more. Her latest project is this week's Studio 5 Bright Spot.
If God puts something on your heart, you can't run from it. Or you can try, but it's not gonna work out well.
Paula Faris took a leap of faith in 2018. She walked away from her seat as co-host on The View and the anchor chair for Good Morning America Weekend. She's now pursuing a personal passion project at ABC, a podcast called Journeys of Faith.
I really wanted to give listeners an opportunity to hear from newsmakers and from influencers. What does their faith journey look like? What gets them through their chapters of triumph and their chapters of tragedy? What holds them together?
Paula credits her faith for keeping her grounded and balanced. This ABC senior national correspondent is a wife and mother, and that faith has also kept her family together.
We've been married 18 years now, thank God, but it's been a lot of work, and we were just talking about it recently. You know, thank God we didn't abandon our relationship, even though at that moment it didn't feel like there was much worth fighting for. When it came to our marriage, we stuck it out, and I can really only say it's because of God. You know, it's at that moment, neither of us really, even though I had moved out, neither of us had a real peace about it, and so we stuck it out. We have 3 beautiful kids, and we're doing so well now.
Paula says making the distinction between identity and career was a personal breakthrough to a more balanced and peace-filled life.
That was the main reason why I stepped away from anchoring GMA weekends and from The View. I didn't feel like I really had much of a work-life balance. It was hard to step away from those 2 jobs that I didn't realize had defined me so much. And I just have to remember to give myself as much grace as I give other people, and that it's not about being perfect. It's about a journey, and to love myself and to love others through it. And, you know, it helps too that, you know, I've surrounded myself, my friends really couldn't care less what I do for a living.
With her podcast, she aims to empower and encourage with candid conversation with guests from many faith backgrounds, including familiar faces like Luke Bryan, Sherry Shepard, and Reza Aslan.
I've had a guest on that was an atheist and another that was Muslim, which I learned a ton about Islam. And I think some of the more profound conversations that we have as Christians are with people that we don't necessarily see eye to eye with. And it's important in this moment to sit down and listen to people and respect people no matter where they're coming from and show them love.
So, who is Paula still hoping to land on the podcast?
I'd love to get Snoop Dogg on, I'm just telling you. He released a gospel album about a year ago. He's had this sudden resurgence or rediscovery or conversion to Christianity, and I feel like people don't give him a chance. I would love to have him on the podcast and give him an opportunity to talk about it.
She has high expectations for the next season of Journeys of Faith.
And you know, the first season, you try to figure out what works and what doesn't. Try to see how people are going to receive it. And people, you know, were very receptive to it. And I'm super excited. And I know, once again, you know, there's that fear, oh my gosh, are people going to listen? But I know, once again, if God calls you to do something, he'll equip you.
For Paula, sharing her own journey of faith is a reflection of God's faithful love.
I'm nothing without my relationship with Jesus. And that's the thing, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. And, you know, I just try to ask myself, how would Jesus handle this situation? You know, do people see Jesus in me? That's the thing, too. And sometimes I feel like I might be the only Jesus that you might see today. And this might be my only crack. So it's just, for me, it's a constant reminder of the magnitude of the responsibility that we have as Christians to love God, love people, and show them the love of Jesus.
The Journeys of Faith with Paula Faris podcast is available right now.
And still to come in Studio 5.
Almighty God, you are the one I worship you alone.
Picasomusik joins us with a good word and a good song.
And welcome back to Studio 5. We have made it to the final headline in this week's countdown. Take a look.
At number 1.
Rise and shine. Breakfast is ready in 10 minutes. And don't make me come back up there.
Snapshots from the red carpet celebration of Breakthrough. Studio 5 is at the Dallas premiere of the film based on the true story of a child falling through the ice and dying, his mother praying, and his coming back to life.
Boys, get off the ice! We're training for the Olympics, sir!
Cindy!
He's been underwater for more than 15 minutes. It's gonna be a recovery, not a rescue. I got something. We got him!
everything medically possible. There's nothing more we can do.
No. Please, God, send your Holy Spirit to save my son.
Chrissy Metz plays the starring role.
You're riding a beautiful wave of success. This is us, breakthrough. In light of all that, do you ever spend much time thinking about the fact that you almost walked away?
You know, yes, I do, especially when I'm asked questions like that, and sort of in the moment, I'm like, whoa, yeah. Like, I sort of defied odds. But I hope that people understand that I just stood in line long enough, and I was committed to doing the work, and that sometimes we're not. We think if it doesn't happen overnight, it's never going to happen. You know, Morgan Freeman, I think his first starring role was at 50. You know, there's so many examples of that. And, you know, it's also not in our time. So I always have to be reminded. But yeah, I do think about that. And then I'm like, whoa. You know, so it's just filled with gratitude.
Breakthrough is in American theaters in time for Easter.
I don't believe John will survive the night.
You don't know my son. He is a fighter.
That wraps this week's countdown. Our next guest goes by the name Picasomusik, but he wears many hats. He's a husband, a father, a one-time youth pastor, and he's this week's Studio 5 One to Watch.
Yeah. For the true worshipers will worship him in spirit and in truth.
Rapped about, you know, the stuff that I knew, stuff that I heard about on the radio and on TV, drugs, money, sex, things of that nature.
Yes, I am in awe. You are Messiah, your God.
I know that there was a big transformation in your life, I think 2000. What sparked the change?
I had an encounter with a cousin of mine who I ended up joining with a few days later and started my first Christian rap group.
Can't even stand in your presence, Lord, and look at your face. I'm so ashamed in your presence, Lord, I look at disgrace.
He actually mentioned a former rapper turned pastor at the time, Mace.
Yeah.
He said he went to hear Mace preach, and I said, well, what was Mace preaching about? And he said he was preaching about how the rap industry is a trap for Satan to snatch your soul. At that moment, it was like a light went off, and I realized that God was speaking through him. That was the first time I think I realized God, you know, could speak through people, and I realized he was speaking to me.
You've now been on we're in 2019 now, so a 19-year journey of hip-hop music, committed to God. I've heard one song from you, The Red Dot. Tell me about that song.
So the message behind that song, a lot of people can get it very confused. The title of that song is called Red Dot on Me. And it's basically me talking about killing my desires, you know, and killing my flesh in order to glorify God and live for God. There's 2 verses in that song. In the first verse, I talk about how I initially died to myself and became born again. In the second verse, I talk about how I'm still dying every day, you know, because it's, you know, a constant battle walking this walk out with Christ.
What a blessing it is just to know you, Lord. Don't need no blessings, just
the song you performed for us here on your visit is what?
You Are.
Tell me about that one.
That is more of a worship-driven song. I mean, I just believe that worship is always relevant. It doesn't matter what it's, you know, as far as sonically what it sounds like. So I really just felt like the Lord was telling me to do that song today.
You are Jesus, down to earth you came, and I will give you worship, and I will lift your name, I will lift your name.
Picasomuzik's work can be found wherever you go to grab your music. Before we go to break, it is time to say it in pictures. Here's this week's Studio 5 Snapshot.
Kids lose their toys every day.
I was made to help a child. I don't remember it being this hard.
Woody, somebody's whispering in your ear. Everything's gonna be okay.
Disney drops a new trailer for the long-awaited Toy Story 4. And these pictures give us a closer look at some of the new toys joining some of our favorites. As we now count down to the June 21st release of the film, Toy Story 4 is this week's Studio 5 Snapshot. Coming up on Studio 5.
An addiction to meth.
methamphetamine. Backstage with Korn guitarist Brian Welch for a sobering story and a final word.
And welcome back to Studio 5. Music fuels the production of this show each week, and this week's soundtrack comes from LaShawn Mitchell. The lyrics are simple: blow my mind, do the impossible. Take a listen to why God can do anything is what's playing in my ear.
Do the impossible. Now this is the good news. God can do anything. God can do anything.
Blow my mind. God can indeed do anything. With that, we are almost out of time for this episode of Studio 5. It's now time to look ahead and see what we're working on for next week. Here's a look.
A new take on this 1941 Disney classic is coming to theaters in live action.
For the record, this was not my idea. Velma works alone.
So do I. Bonjour, Millie, Joe. And you? Charming.
This Disney film stars Eva Green, Danny DeVito, and Colin Farrell. How would you describe the cast of characters in this circus?
Multifaceted, and just a hodgepodge of psychological, emotional oddities. So I got to teach you to fly?
I know how to fly.
We have that for you next week, along with a new project from Jesus Culture's Kim Walker-Smith. Be sure to join us for that. As for the final word for this show, we're giving that to Korn guitarist Brian Welch, whose new documentary shares the story of healing for him and his daughter, and it follows his addiction to alcohol and drugs and his departure from the multi-platinum Grammy-winning metal band back in 2005.
I have a Showtime documentary that is out on Showtime right now.
And the winner is Korn, Freak on a Leash.
She's cute, huh?
I have plenty of memories from when my dad was in Korn.
I love you, Daddy.
Peekaboo. It changed my perspective on how I saw, like, love.
It's about me and my daughter and her being born to the crazy rock and roll world, all the pain and suffering that we had to endure, and the healing.
All of the other kids had their mom and dad come to Mother's Day or Father's Day.
I couldn't stop being bad to my body. I couldn't stop these addictions. I had become an animal. I just looked up and I just said, Father, I can't pray when I'm on drugs. Do anything you want to my life.
And everything is restored, so.
What brings restoration? How did you guys pull through it?
Well, it's just, you know, God is real, for one thing. Jesus promises that we're going to go through things in this life, and he also promises that he will heal. So that's what got me through. All things through Christ who strengthens me.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The word is true, and that is a great final word for this edition of Studio 5 and this week's look at uplifting entertainment. Until next time, make time to uplift someone around you. And then come on back and see where Studio 5 takes you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.